Yeah.
Okay, I'm starting now. So, Bismillah Rahmanir Rahim. In today's debate, we are debating whether Islam is from God or not. Whether God exists or not is not the question of this debate. This debate basically assumes God exists. We are arguing whether Islam is from God or not in that case. Now, firstly, about the as far as the burden of proof is concerned, Islam is from God is a claim. Islam is not from God is also a claim. Both are claims, and both require proof. Leaving either claim without any proof is blind faith. Now, as far as the arguments for the truth of Islam are concerned, I'll be basically limiting myself to three or four types. First argument is namely about the Quran challenge. Now, what is the Quran challenge? Basically, in the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Arabs of the time period were at the peak of Arabic language and linguistics. This is something that both Muslim scholars and non-Muslim scholars and historians will recognize this point. It's not disputed. Now, in that time period, the Quran was revealed, and it basically challenged firstly the kuffar, the pagan Arabs who were experts in Arabic, to produce something like the Quran, then produce 10 surah like the Quran. When they failed both these challenges, the challenge then was reduced to one surah, which is basically 10 words or 3 lines like the Quran. This challenge failed. Now, and here's the important point, this is not something subjective. This is not about beauty, although the Quran is beautiful. But this challenge is not about beauty. This is about something very specific. There are 16 types of poetry in Arabic, two types of prose. All Arabic language work in pre-Islam and after the time of Islam, and when Islam was being revealed, fits into one of these categories. The Quran does not fit into these categories, and no, basically nothing has been produced in Arabic that also doesn't fit into any of these categories, and nothing has been produced in Arabic that is in the same linguistic form as the Quran. This is an objective criteria. Now, the reason we know this hasn't, or the reason you can know this hasn't happened is because both Muslims and non-Muslim scholars, dozens of them accept this point, and dozens of non-Muslim scholars accept that the Quran challenge hasn't been met. One example is Angelica Neuwirth, another is Karen Armstrong. I can literally list dozens here in this regard. So, if the Quran is basically a human work, right? Why can't anyone for 1400 years produce 3 lines like it? It's not, that's why. And the fact that no one can imitate it is a very strong argument for it being from God, because all human art and speech can be imitated, but the Quran cannot be imitated. And this is something recognized by Muslims and non Muslim scholars. So, this is my first argument. My second argument for the truth of Islam is from the prophecies of Prophet Muhammad. Now, basically, for humans to have knowledge of the future is next to impossible, and Prophet Muhammad made a lot of prophecies, counterintuitive prophecies that he couldn't have possibly known about the events happening in the future. There are more than 50 examples of prophecies that Prophet Muhammad predicted, and that those prophesied and those are fulfilled after the compilation of a hadith. So no one can claim these prophecies were happened first, and the events happened first and the prophecies are made up later. This is something no one can claim for this very reason. Now, I'll just give a few examples of this. One example being Green Arabia. There's a hadith in Sahih Muslim, Prophet Muhammad saying basically before the end of time, Arabia will return to being green. So now, what is being said here? That Arabia was green once before and it will return to being green again. This is happening right now. We can see Arabia becoming green. Moreover, we have NASA has basically done historical research on this point, and there are basically bones of animals found in Arabia that could only survive in wet climate. So we can prove very easily, very strongly that Arabia was green, and it is becoming green again. So this is an absolutely massive prophecy. Uh, no one would have made this up. If some people basically inherited a text which had this, they wouldn't have believed it because it was that unlikely. Now, just because someone can make a contention that there's a book from Aristotle which basically mentions that some basically deserts becoming to rain a little bit, that climate change of this sort can occur. But this doesn't refute this prophecy for multiple reasons. First being, if someone found that in a written word, someone being from Arabia, they wouldn't simply believe this. Secondly, because it's so unlikely. Secondly, even if minor land changes could take place, right? Minor changes in climate are understandable. The prophecies about the entire Arabian Peninsula becoming green and being green before. No one would have believed this, and it is very difficult to derive this from Aristotle's text. Thirdly, we have so many prophecies of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that cannot be dated to any pre-Islamic text. So plagiarism claim does not work. Another example of the prophecies of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is, for example, a hadith in Sahih Sunan Nisai where Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "A time will come when everyone will consume interest. Even those people who won't consume interest will nevertheless be affected by it." Now, this is something that has never happened in human history, that an entire society either consuming interest or being affected by it. At the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Christians had forbidden interest, consuming interest. Islam came and banned it as well. So it's neither based on circumstances, neither it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Thirdly, this cannot possibly be predicted at that time because something like this, the entire society basically consuming interest or being affected by it, it never happened in human history. Now, a contention can be made that some people were consuming interest, but there's a difference between some people or rich people consuming interest or the money lenders consuming interest or the generality of public consuming interest. This is in the prophecy and this is nowhere else. Neither did it happen anywhere else. Yet it is clearly happening in front of our eyes right now. So this is an absolutely massive proof for the truth of Islam. Now I can give more than 50 prophecies in this regard, but I'll just stick to two for now. Another proof is the historic for the truth of Islam is the historical accuracy of the Quran. For example, and there are dozens of examples, and maybe I'll bring a few more in the open discussion. The Quran basically uses the title of Pharaoh. Basically, talks about Egyptian history in the time of Prophet Yusuf al-Islam and Prophet Musa al-Islam. Quran used the word king during the time of Prophet Yusuf al-Islam and Pharaoh in the time of Prophet Musa al-Islam. Now, this is historically accurate, and this basically is not in the Bible. If this is the case, right, then this basically buries the claim about Quran plagiarizing from pre-Islamic texts, because if Quran was plagiarizing from those texts, why doesn't it have the mistakes of those texts, and why does it have extra accurate historical information? So this is the, and there are dozens of more examples like this. Maybe we'll get to some in the open discussion. Now, my fourth argument for the truth of Islam is basically the physical miracles of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, such as splitting the moon, and there are dozens of other, like feeding of multitude. There are dozens of miracles like this in our historical records. Now, if our historical records are reliably preserved, accurate, and we can prove that they are accurate, then these miracles certainly did take place, and we can very easily prove that. For example, there was a stylometric study. Stylometry is basically linguistic using computers. A stylometric study on Sahih Bukhari that shows that the sayings of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Sahih Bukhari have one author. Now, why does this prove hadith preservation? Well, there's a very simple reason. Firstly, every single hadith that is narrated in Hadith Sahih Bukhari is narrated elsewhere as well. So Imam Bukhari did not make any of these up. Now, these hadiths are narrated in different times and places and by dozens of people. If those people were making these up, these wouldn't have one author. If these were coming from multiple sources, these wouldn't have one author. The only way these hadiths can have one author is if the narrators are honest and the narrations go back to a common source. The only common source in all those narrations is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hence, we can easily prove that these ahadiths go back to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hence, ahadiths are preserved, and the physical miracles of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually occurred. Now, I have 1 minute left, so I'll give another argument for reliability of Islamic historical records. And this is basically the dozens of things, the absolute dozens of things in our historical records that are confirmed by criterion of similarity. Basically, no one would have made these up. For example, all the ahadiths that are praising Hazrat Ali Raziallahu anhu, the Umayyads and his family. The Umayyads, these are numerous throughout the Sunni historical records. Sunni scholars wouldn't have made this up, that they would have problems with Shia. The Umayyads wouldn't have made this up. The Abbasids certainly wouldn't have made these up. No one would have made these up. These are authentic, and these are a massive proof for Hadith preservation. And not just this, there are dozens of things in this regard. For example, most of the ahadiths are narrated by younger companions. If fabricators were making up ahadiths, they would have not picked younger companions. They would have picked uh, for example, the 10 companions who were promised paradise. There are dozens of things in this regard, and literally I can use the criterion of dissimilarity to validate more than half of the Islamic historical records. That's how strongly our historical records are preserved, and that proves the physical miracles of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My 10 minutes are up.
Okay, that's your 10 minutes, and Gabriel, you can do your opening statement for 10 minutes.
Sure. So I just want first to focus on like the prophecy stuff, like, and within like included the idea of scientific miracles. Then I will come back later to like the challenge of the Quran, like to bring something like it and other stuff. So first, like I have like a simple like inductive argument. So people back then did not know anything about future knowledge. Humans observably cannot predict the future, with exception to narrow areas where all the data relevant is available. So, based on inductive logic, the chance that Muhammad could predict the future is approaching 0% because he's a human. Here is a simple example of inductive arguments. Imagine a country, the men in which grow beards, and I tell you that a man called John lives in that country. Then I ask you, what are the chances that John has a beard? The correct answer is very likely. The only difference between the two arguments is that in the case of John, we know that men can easily shave. We saw it happen before, and it happens all the time in different places. But in the case of Muhammad, we have never found a human who can predict detailed future events accurately and consistently. So, to prove that indeed they have knowledge of the future. That's why the chance that Muhammad knew the future is much smaller than the chance that John does not have a beard. This line of argument gives Muhammad a default status, which is when he spoke of future events, or like for that matter, like scientific miracles, he did not actually know what he was talking about, unless he used data available to everyone in his environment. If we have no reason to think that such data exists, then we should treat Muhammad's prophecies and like, of course, these claims of scientific miracles that like Muslims try to claim, although Muhammad himself never claimed knowledge of, as we should treat all of that as a fabrication of his imagination, and of course Muslims' imagination, and hence interpret his words in a superstitious way. For example, if Muhammad said people will fly, then we should not understand that as Muhammad talking about planes, but we should understand it as him talking about people flying on magical carpets or flying horses or like Superman, or as in the rapture or any other superstitious way. The most important thing is to avoid interpreting his words in a way which corresponds to the actual future events, or like reality, which is difficult to probe for people back then, like when it comes to scientific miracles, because that violates his default status. The only case in which we are allowed to interpret his words in a way which corresponds with actual future events is the case when his words are so detailed and so accurate to the extent that we cannot interpret his words in any other way that does not correspond to the actual future. So if we are able to interpret any prophecy by Muhammad in any way that does not correspond to reality because the prophecy is so vague and lack the details, then his default status is preserved as someone who does not actually know about the events of the future. Now, I shall like respond to like some of like, for example, like, you know, the example that he brought about like the Arabia being green and filled with river. Now, first of all, he's talking about like there are two parts within that. The first part is related to the past. He said حتى تعود جزيرة العرب, so until it go back to being in that status, and he is relying on the word عادة. So in لسان العرب عادة could mean صار, so it could come with the meaning of becoming. No, not, or like for the first time, not going back to become as it in the state that it used to be in. So that is the first thing. Like both meanings are possible, and so like there is no argument there. Now, when it comes to the future, first of all, this prophecy did not actually come true. The Arabia is not filled with greenery and rivers. You cannot say that. Now you can say, oh, but in the future it is expected that in what like few thousand years it would be like that, which is great. But I mean, you are claiming now knowledge of the future. We don't know that. It is possible that it will happen, will be that way, and it's possible that it will not happen. Maybe like we kill each other in a nuclear war or something like that. Like, so this is something that did not happen. Now there are other reasons to think why Muhammad would say something like that. So let's assume that this actually happened. Like we lived up to like 10,000 years, and we actually saw that happening. It makes sense that he would say that in like without any knowledge of the future. So he would basically be saying that because like, okay, like he and his companions and like the people back then lived in the desert. So it makes sense to bring the good news. Like it's something to manipulate the feelings of his followers, telling them that look, the desert in front of you is going to be filled with green and rivers. That is something nice. So it is just something which is to manipulate people's feelings. We should never accept that he has any knowledge of the future because of the argument that I put forward. And inductively, since he is a human, then the default position, he does not know anything about the future. As long as we can interpret his words in a way which does not correspond with like the future events, then that's what we should interpret his words as. So that's when it comes to like the idea of prophecies and scientific. I will get to other details like and other like claims of his related to that in the cross-examining section. But now, so the idea that the people fail to come up with something like the Quran because it is first, like he mentioned something as like it's a new way, like a new, like it's not shared. Or by the way, the Quran, like almost like a big portion of it, like third or like at least fourth or something like that, it is saja. And saga like something like exists all the time, like a lot of example of saga that people say. So like basically like there is nothing new about that part, and the other part is like just words, normal words, like maybe like a little bit like put in a specific way which might appeal to some people and other not. But at the same, like it is kalam mursal, so like just normal talking. At occasion, it ends with something that resembles poetry, but not likely. So that are the two parts of the Quran. Like it's something that is very mundane. Now, like when it comes to like the question of like try to bring something like it, right? So what is the criteria? Now, let's say that, like, let's assume that no one comes up with something like it. What does this prove? Proves nothing. It proves like, okay, this guy like has like some have like authoring abilities. He could come up with like that kind of text. Like no one is like Shakespeare. So yeah, like that's great. Like good for him. It doesn't mean like he's able to invent like text. So that is the first thing. The second thing is like if we come up with something like that, like there are two responses. The first response is, oh, you are just imitating the Quran. The second response, no, it's actually if you don't imitate it, then it is actually something which is not like it at all. So you cannot win because there is no criteria. It's just the subjective sense. So yeah, that is. That's basically it. Like, so there is no way to win because like there is actually no criteria. I would invite him to present me the criteria based on which objective criteria that is not invented by him and other Muslim scholars for that determine whether something is like like it or better than it or whatever. Like for me, like some cartoon songs are better than it. So I would like to know like what is the criteria for that. Now he speaks of splitting the moons and takes the hadith as a proof for it. Now, like, no, the hadith is merely hearsay. It's not proof of anything. Like, it's a disaster way of reporting information. And yeah, we can get into it in cross-examining section. I'm not sure if I have any time now. Is
Yeah,
it done?
it's basically over. Yeah. Like,
Okay.
10 seconds. It's fine. We can just move on to the open discussion. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, okay. Would you, if you would like to start?
Can I make the first point? Then I'll allow you to respond. Like,
Sure.
sure, okay. Firstly, there is no cross-examining section. There's just a 30-minute open discussion because that's the
Sure,
format
sure.
you agreed to. Firstly. Secondly, as far as the inductive argument is concerned, you are assuming Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is just a human. I am arguing he's a prophet of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So assumptions are worthless, subjective value judgments are worthless, criteria are worthless unless they are proven. Like I have to argue for my claims the same way you have to argue for your claims. So all of that point was nonsensical. Now, as far as the prophecies are concerned, just because we can come up with an like random idiotic interpretation, that doesn't mean we should take that interpretation. We should take the literal or close to literal or most plausible interpretation in this regard. So that's as far as your criteria is concerned. You can respond to this and we can then move to the specifics.
Yeah, so basically, like, Muhammad is a human. That's what I know about him. And since he's a human, then the inductive argument applies to him. Like, humans do not have the ability to see in the future. So by default, he does not have the ability to see in the future. The chances that he has this ability is approaching zero. And anything that he says so should interpret it as if he does not see the future. And any interpretation which for his word that includes him not having the ability to see in the future is the most plausible in interpretation.
Okay, humans don't have ability to predict the future, but prophets of God do. So like
Yeah.
this
So
claim is still nonsensical.
yeah. So here is the thing. We do not start from the position of he's the prophet of God. We start from the position of what information do we have about him. The information that we have about him is that he's a human. He who said this stuff. Now, humans cannot see into the future, and therefore, like, based on this data, like this data that actually we know about him, we can come up with this argument. Now, if we include other data which, like, is hypothetical, then yeah, like, the argument doesn't work. But we only should operate upon the data that we have, and the data that we have is that he is a human who just said a bunch of things, and that's what should we build on.
Here's what we should not assume, right? We should not assume my position that he's a prophet of God, and we should not assume your position that he's just a human. Both are claims, both require proof, and believing either claim without any proof is blind faith. Now, I'm not assuming my position, but I am happy to argue for that, just in the same way you have to argue for your position.
Yeah,
You can address this point, and then we'll move on to the specific prophecies or whatever.
yeah. So again, like, all that we know about him is that he's a human. That is the thing that we all can agree on, because it's like, we can even say that it's observable data. So, like, that's not actually true, but I don't want to get into history denying. So yeah, like, it's a fact that he's a human, and he takes the status of all humans, unless contradictory evidence or data, like, contradict that default status of him.
Okay, you can believe he's just a human, but again, that's your assumption. It's not based on anything. Either he's a true prophet or he's not a true prophet. Both are claims, both require proof. Now, you can address that after in when you're in your next turn to speak, right? But I'll just get into the first of the specifics. Now, you were claiming that basically prophecies can be just dismissed, right? And your point about Green Arabia was that it's not become green till now. It will become in the future. Firstly, just 2 points in this regard. We have very strong evidence of it becoming green in the future. Firstly, so your claim doesn't work as a contention against it.
Well,
Secondly, it is. I'll let you speak. Finish. Let me finish my point. Then I'll let you speak. Secondly, it is becoming green right now through artificial methods such as central pivot irrigation. So it is becoming green right now, unless we posit some sort of insane nuclear event or some sort of nonsense like that. This process being fulfilled in front of our eyes. So of course I'll use it. You can respond to this point.
Yeah, again, so basically two responses. The first, you're saying, first of all, like when it comes to now, no, the hadith says they are gonna be filled with like gardens and rivers. لن تكون تصير جزيرة عرب جنته وأنهار. So gardens and river. That, I mean, Saudi Arabia and the Arabic, the Arabian Peninsula is not filled with gardens and rivers. That's first of all. Second of all, when it comes to the future, we have no knowledge. Okay, like for me, it is more likely that the planet is scorched in a nuclear war, and that is not gonna happen. So again, like you're assuming that the future, like that future event, is a guaranteed thing, but there is no reason to think that. There's no even a reason to think that it's more likely. But again, even if I saw that, that wouldn't be like a good argument, because it is like, if you live in the very north, and like someone want to claim that he's a prophet, he would say, guys, like this place is gonna be sunny, you're gonna feel warm, just for the sake of manipulating these people. There is no reason to think that he said that because he actually had like knowledge about the future. There is only reason, so his words should be interpreted as like the tactic that for manipulating his followers. That's it.
Okay, I'll address this point. As far as, again, like I said, your intuitions and personal opinions, yours and mine, are irrelevant, worthless. Arguments matter, yours and mine. Now, as far as assumptions are concerned, firstly, again, it is becoming green right now. It is not like it hasn't become completely green yet, but it is becoming green right now. And with things like central pivot irrigation, we do have gardens, so that criterion is fulfilled. As far as rivers are concerned, of course, they will take some time, but all our current evidence that we have suggests that it is going there. And even in case of, for example, some sort of nuclear war happens somewhere, right? That still doesn't mean Arabia wouldn't become green in a few thousand years. And even if that doesn't happen, through technology, it will become green much sooner, inshallah. In fact, the way technology is processing this process seems more and more imminent, more and more likely, more and more
Yeah.
quickly happening. So again, why shouldn't I use this prophecy in that case? You
Yeah.
can address this point, and then we can move to something else.
Yeah, again, as I told you, it does not matter if our prediction is that it's gonna happen. What matters is, did it happen or not? Like, is the Arabian Peninsula is filled with gardens and river or not? That is not the case. So yeah, it did not happen. You saying it could happen through technology? That has something that is independent from Muhammad. That is the intervention of a human. Humans can fulfill a specific prophecy. That is totally fine. It does not mean that Muhammad actually had the knowledge of that. It's just humans trying to fulfill Muhammad's prophecy or not. Like, even if like they did not have this intention in their mind, like they did it for other reasons, like because they want like to be around the gardens and the river, which are like nice things. It is independent from the claim that Muhammad had the ability to see into the future, because as I said, anything that Muhammad says should be interpreted as something as something which only a normal person who does not see into the future could say. So basically, he just like wanted to influence his followers about, like, okay, like as the examples that I give before, like if you are like in Siberia and like you are a prophet there and you want to bring the good news, like to manipulate people, and so it's a good tactic to tell them, well, like this snowy place, it's gonna be very sunny and very warm. Yeah, so basically.
Okay, I'll address this point, and again, you want to then respond or not, that's up to you. As far as the point about whether this prophecy is like someone in Siberia would say it's sunny or not, they wouldn't say this. They wouldn't predict the exact opposite of what's been the climate for thousands of years. Why? No one would believe them. And it would be very difficult. Like this type of things, even 200 years ago, would have caused massive shubuhat, massive doubts to Muslims. So no one would have made this prophecy. And in fact, there are dozens of prophecies like this. Is actually a massive proof for hadith preservation, because they wouldn't have been made up. And if they were inherited from a previous source, a dishonest person wouldn't report them. But the fact that the Muslim scholars reported these things shows their sincerity, firstly. Secondly, as far as whether this thing is happening or not, all our evidence suggests it's happening. And as far as the gardens part is concerned, that's happening right now. So so of course you will use this as an argument for Islam. Thirdly, the point about technology, you are saying that because technology happens, this prophecy doesn't work. That claim is nonsensical, and I'll give a very simple reason why. At the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, were people capable of doing this? No. So how would he know this would happen? The prophecy doesn't mention whether it will be through technology or natural means. It's not there. What's
Yeah.
there is that this will happen, and it's happening right now, which is why this is an argument for the truth of Islam. Now, I'll let you speak one more time on this. Then I think we should go to. You can pick which of the points from the opening statements you want to
Sure.
discuss.
Sure. So that, just like the example that I gave before about like Muhammad saying that people will fly. Now there is no reason to think that what he meant is like people are going to fly in planes. Like since he is just a man, and like we should interpret his words as like a superstitious thing that a man could have said like 14 years ago, then his understanding of flying would be something like, you know, flying on a flying horse or something like that, or flying like on a magical carpet or something like that. Just like that, anything like including that when it comes to like, you know, prophecy and stuff like that, it is the same thing basically. So when he said that the Jazz is going to be filled by rivers and the garden, when it comes to technology, there is no reason that he actually knew about that. If people actually achieve that through technology, there is no reason to think that he actually knew about that. But again, there are two things. First, you can say like it is going to happen as much as you like, but it did not happen. When the prophecy is fulfilled, we can talk. Now, assuming that the prophecy is fulfilled, again, he is not saying that because he knows the future. He is saying that because he wanted to bring the good news to manipulate his followers' psyche. So just like a prophet in Siberia, who wanted to use this tactic to tell his followers, okay, like this frozen place is going to be sunny. Yeah, that's something that like a tactic that could be used. It has nothing to do with actually him having the ability to see in the future and knowing that. So he does not know that at all.
Okay. Now I'll get to the point about flying. Right. Firstly, again, your assumptions are irrelevant in this regard. You can't just assume he's a false prophet. You have to give evidence for it. So that's an assumption. It's irrelevant. Firstly. Secondly, since you brought up flying, right? You do know there is a hadith where basically says the Dajjal will be flying in a donkey made of iron, and between its basically wings there is a span of 40 cubits. This is exactly like an airplane. So even on the point of flying, there is a clear-cut hadith that is refuting your claim. But as far as technology is concerned, right, there are dozens of ahadith in this regard which actually show that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a lot of knowledge of basically technology in this regard. Why? Because there's a hadith, I think it's in Musnad Ahmad. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying mountains will be removed from their places. This never happened. There was never any technology to do this. This is happening right now. A massive proof in this regard. Then there's hadith in Sunan Ibn Majah where basically says that the thing on a man's thigh will inform him what is happening in his house. This is easily correlated with the cell phone. So the point about technology is clearly proven from that hadith. The same hadith says that people's shoes will be talking. Now we have basically speakers on running shoes, like companies like Nike have produced this, and there are multiple cases in this regard. So you cannot claim that Prophet Muhammad did not have knowledge with respect to technology, because we have specific clear-cut ahadith in this regard that are refuting your claim. So you can address these points now.
Yeah, so like the first thing you mentioned was Dajjal's donkey. Now you can compare the structure of a donkey to the structure of a plane, and yeah, basically like that argument is not that strong as far as I know. When you're talking about like pulling out like the the mountains moving. Now I don't know what is the actual claim here. Like, I mean, you can explain. Like, I'm gonna jump next to your other point, but actually let's explain. Like, what do you mean by mountain moving? What is the claim here?
Okay, I'll just be brief. There's a hadith in Musnad Ahmad. Now, this is linked in the book Forbidden Prophecies, where it says that before the end of the hour, our time will come basically near the hour where mountains will be removed from their places. This is the
Yeah.
hadith, and this is happening in Arabia right now. You can continue.
Okay, I don't understand. So moving from split. Okay, why do you think? Like, I don't know what is happening in Arabia right now, but for me, as I understand it, it's a superstitious thing to say. Like, it's basically so it's the mountains by the power of Allah is going to be ripped apart from the earth and just put somewhere else or something like that, which is something superstitious. It has nothing to do with whatever is going right now in Arabia. Well, what is the next point? I'm sorry.
Next point was, I'm sure you have heard this, the hadith regarding the mobile phone and basically talking shoes.
Oh, the token shoe. Yeah. So again, like, so the hadith that you are mentioning is hadith ready. So it's a token. So it's say multiple thing. It say your thigh is going to took, and your like shoes. It's not does not mention shoe, but it mention hoof. Which like it could mean like your slippers or whatever. So and the tip of your whip, the whip that is used for beating people, the tip is gonna have the ability. All these things are gonna have the ability to talk. So clearly, that this is talking about like superstitious things. It's not talking about like any cell phones. And again, the default position, just like if Muhammad said, like some people will fly, we should interpret it as in a superstitious way. So flying on flying horses or magical carpets, that is all the same thing. Like, okay, it's like the all the ayats and verses that's talking about like your skin is gonna talk, and your hearing is gonna talk, and your tongue is gonna talk. And so it's superstitious. It has nothing to do with technology. When your skin talks, that is not like a cell phone or anything. When your thigh, as mentioned in the same hadith, when your thigh like in your leg talks, that is not something which is related to phones. So yeah, like you can put a phone in your shoe, but that doesn't mean that the shoe is talking. For him, it is the way that he meant it is that like the shoe itself is gonna talk in a superstitious way, just like the trees and like the tip of the whip and your thigh talking and stuff like that.
Okay, I'll address this point. Firstly, as far as the point about flying donkey is concerned, donkeys are not made of iron either. The hadith mentions donkeys basically made of iron. So the claim about this being related to physical donkeys is, to be honest, nonsensical based on that simple fact. Secondly, you are assuming it's a flying carpet. You are assuming that it is basically like a body part speak on the day of judgment. Firstly, the part about flying carpets is nonsensical. What is brought about without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Secondly, as far as the part about body part speaking, right? All of that is happening on the day of judgment. This hadith is talking about our physical world. So the part about body parts talking on all of this case is nonsensical. Secondly, as far as the part about thigh, right? Our thigh will speak. Since you speak Arabic, you know this that it could when the language that is being used here, it could mean the thigh or it could mean something that is on the thigh. So your claim is here is nonsensical. On a literal interpretation, this hadith correlates with technology, which is why your claim doesn't work. As far as the talking shoe is concerned, that's not a part of human body. The shoe is not a part of human body. So your earlier point about body parts basically speaking, right, that claim doesn't work here. Secondly, you said that hoof is not a jogger or a running shoe, right? What was the word for joggers in Arabic at that time period? If there was no word for this, Why can't Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam use the word for shoe? All of your claims are just based on assumption. I'm not assuming that this is talking about. I'm arguing for it from start to finish. But while what you are doing, you are just assuming your position. You are assuming Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a false prophet and making up interpretations to basically make yourself feel better at that point. You can respond to this point. Then I want to basically move on to historical accuracy or a Quran challenge or Hadith preservation.
Yeah, so when I'm talking about, I'm not assuming that is the default position, as I said. So it is not like something which is. So when it's vague, when like Muhammad says something which is vague, the default position is that what he says is something which is like superstitious, or something that a man who used to live back then could have easily said, because like he's a man who used to live back then. So by default, that he is gonna say something that people back then could have easily said. So when like it's not my problem. Like let's say let's say he said, for example, like people will fly. It's not my problem that he did not specify. Okay, they are gonna fly in these things that are shaped like that and have this specific thing that they call engine and have that and that's not my problem. So since he is vague, then by default it is interpreted as a superstitious thing or a magical thing. The same thing when it comes to like the thigh token. Again, it is it says the thigh. It doesn't say that something on the thigh is token. It says that the thigh is gonna be token. It is saying also the tip of the whip. Like okay, like what is that? The tip of the whip, like is gonna talk. And at the end of the day, the shoe. So basically, it is the same as like skin talking. It is the same as trees and rocks talking, and it is the same as the thigh talking. These are superstitious things. It has nothing to do with technology. It's talking about like God, for example, growing a mouse, like the little shoe and the big fat thigh having a mouth and starting to talk in a very magical and weird and disturbing way. So that is basically what was going on through the mind of Muhammad. There is no reason to think that he has anything else and had anything else on his mind.
Okay, I'll address these points and then maybe you can respond or move on to something else. That's up to you. As far as the assumptions are concerned, it's not the default position that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a false prophet. This is just your fantasy. Whether he's a true prophet is a claim. Whether he's a false prophet is a claim. Both are claims. Both require proof. And believing either claim without any proof is blind faith. So it's not the default position. That's just your assumption. Firstly, secondly, you didn't address my point about the skin talking or whatever talking was in the end of the world. You didn't address that point, and when you next speak, I want you to address that point. Those things are at the day of judgment. These things are happening in the material world. Thirdly, as regard prophecies or hadith and Quran, generally anything. First thing that's done is going according to the literal interpretation. In fact, non-Muslims, kuffar in general, and people arguing against Islam will always go to the literal interpretation, except when it comes to the prophecy. So here's what's going to happen. Either we take the literal interpretation or are close to literal interpretation, or we don't. Since you guys like it, like taking the literal interpretation so much, and since that's something that should be done, we'll take the literal interpretation. On literal interpretation, each of the prophecies that have been brought so far has been fulfilled. I don't think in the last section you addressed the point about basic donkeys being not being made of iron. I would like to address this point. You said that the hadith doesn't say something on the thigh, but this is linguistically like this. This is how it would be spoken in Arabic. For example, Quran says that the head of Zakaria alayhi salam became white, right? But we didn't. The head didn't become white. The hair became white. Something on the head became white. So this is a clear-cut method of speaking in Arabic. If that's the case, your contention against this hadith doesn't work. As far as the point about shoes speaking, right? The point about shoes growing a mouth, that's your assumption. The point about flying carpet, this is something taken from Aladdin. It has no basis 1300 years ago in the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these assumptions are irrelevant. Now, when you next speak, right, you can respond to what I've said now, and we can also go to the Quran challenge as well. One thing you said about the Quran challenge, that 1/3 of it is such. I can quote Angelica Neuwirth right now, who's basically saying that it is as though Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had created an entirely new literary form that some people were not ready for, but which thrilled others. Without this experience of the Quran, it is extremely unlikely that Islam would have taken root. This is from Karen Armstrong, A History of God, page 78. And I can quote dozens of references in this regard from dozens of Orientalists. So the claim about Saj is false. Now you can address both these points.
Yeah, so basically, like, let's say, like I told you about, like, someone who lives in Rome, right? And it's established fact that the people who live in Rome have beard, for example, right? So if this person, like, let's call him John, lives in Rome, then most likely that person have a beard, right? So that's just simple inductive reason. Now let's someone start claiming that this person does not have a beard, right? Now that claim has nothing to do with it. Does not change the status. Does not Claims have no weight of their own. Claims should be supported with evidence. My evidence is more likely that John have a beard is that inductively most people generally men who live in Rome have beards. So and John lives in Rome, then inductively it is most likely that he has beard. Now someone claiming Agnes that should have prove Agnes that, you know, I have the actual data. Now when you talk about the donkey who is iron, yes, like, okay, I can, anyone can just make you an iron donkey right now, and it will not look nothing like a plane whatsoever. It will be just an iron donkey. Like, you can make an iron donkey, you can make an iron roaster, you can make an iron a crocodile or whatever. So it's gonna be, at the end of the day, it's a donkey. It's not a plane. So now I can tell you what, like, I can be charitable and I tell you, yeah, okay. So both interpretation is possible. Yeah, it is possible that, you know, the thigh and the whip, the tip of the whip, and the shoes are gonna speak in a way that requires technology, and it's possible also that they speak in a superstitious way. In this case, you still have no point because both are possible. But I'm not charitable, I don't need to be charitable. I'm telling you, most likely the chance that he meant something which is superstitious, approaching 100% based on this under basic inductive argument. Now, when it comes to like the Quran, you're saying, okay, there's no way that it is could have spread. No. I mean, I don't care how it spread. I might argue that it spread through like different methods. Like maybe it has had some good teachings, and, you know, like they cut some people's head and enslaved them. So again, like multiple. There are multiple ways in which Islam could have spread, but that has nothing to do with like the words for and the Quran is made of saj'a and like, you know, this other part, like, there is nothing weird or special about it. Some people might find some surahs beautiful or amazing or whatever, but most likely because they have a weird test or because they are born, they were raised up to believe so. But there is nothing special about it whatsoever.
Okay. I think we have very few minutes left, so I'll just because I don't think we are going on a lot of the other points. I'll just make it brief, and then you can make the next point brief as well, because we don't have a lot of time left. As far as the point about induction is concerned, right? You compare this to people who drink alcohol. The comparison is not the same. Firstly, people have a natural inclination to drink alcohol. People don't have a natural inclination to make prophecies about the future or claim to be prophets of God. So that claim is like the comparison does not work. Secondly, a lot of the people claim to be are alcoholics. Very few people claim to be prophets. So this comparison is basically nonsensical. Firstly. Secondly, as far as the Quran challenge is concerned, I can bring dozens of scholars saying this. These are non-Muslim experts who cannot be said to be biased. So your claim basically doesn't work. Thirdly, as far as regard the technological things are concerned, whether you are charitable or not, it's irrelevant. And if you agree with me on those things that the interpretations I'm taking are possible in this regard, right? You are not being charitable. That is something I already have. If you return a loan you took from me, you are not being charitable in that. Now, as far as the technological things are concerned, right? As far as the linguistics of the ayat about the hadith about telephone, mobile phones is concerned, right? You are not being charitable in that regard. The Arabic linguistics allow for that, and this prophecy, these prophecies, all of these are fulfilled on literal interpretations when it was beyond unlikely to be fulfilled on literal interpretations. Now, in this regard, one thing I think you are trying to do, but you haven't really put it into words, is
This is
basically
30
say,
minutes. 30 minutes,
yeah,
but yeah.
just I'll finish this point quickly. You're trying to do is basically claim that these happened by accident or chance. How do we evaluate whether this is by chance or not? By looking at the number of prophecies. If it is one or two, your explanation about chance can be plausible. But if these cases are more than 50, as they are in our historical records, then the claim about chance or luck simply doesn't work. You can respond now, and then I think we will basically end this the open discussion. Then we move on to the Q&A.
Do we have time, Logical?
I guess you could just respond quickly, and then we can just go to Q&A.
Yeah. Okay. So again, so I'm not making an example or analogy when it comes to Muhammad being a human. Like this is an inductive argument. Like humans, yes, it's fact that humans cannot see in the future. Muhammad is a human, then most likely he cannot see into the future. Like it is not like an analogy. It's inductive argument. That's first of all. Second, when it comes to like the Quran, you're saying that I am biased. So I mean, do you fail to prove objectively like there is something special about it? Then like if it's a subjective thing, like so you're saying against me, it's what you feel, what you think against what I think. There's no objective way to determine that. Now, when it comes to like the technology and like the shoe talking and the thigh talking and the whip tip talking, now. Yes, if I was charitable, I would say both are possible, and we have no way to assign a likelihood. Yeah, so that is if I was charitable, and you still will have no point, but I'm not, because there is no reason to, because I have this inductive argument. So it's more likely that he is superstitious and does not actually know anything about the future.
Okay, I think we should now move on to the Q&A. If anyone has any questions, they can raise their hand.
Just before we start the Q&A, this is for 10 minutes. So, like, this is just for 10 minutes, then I have to go.
Yeah. Okay, we have Jundullah first.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
You guys can hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you all right. Fine.
I have a question for the supposed Muslim. I don't think he's Muslim, but anyways, did you prove Islam being true via Tawheed, or did you use something else?
Can I respond?
Yeah.
Firstly, I made arguments for the truth of Islam, multiple of them that have been always been used by Sunni Muslims as arguments for the truth of Islam. Secondly, Salafiyah don't get to talk about Tawheed when their university graduates have to temper the debates with laymen. I mean, the last Salafi I debated, he had to unlist his debate with me. So your opinion is worthless.
We have Zonda next. I'd like to ask a question.
Yo, Amar.
Hi.
Well, my question's simple. Do you believe Noon the whale?
Can you repeat?
Do you believe in a whale called Noon?
Do I believe in a well called Noon?
Yes.
Could be there. Could it's possible it's not there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we got Tutu next.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, so you said you had sources of unbiased, or you said non-Muslim speakers or scholars that said that the Quran is not replicable. So, what are those sources?
Okay, in this regard, anyone who has been involved in this topic even a little bit knows that there are dozens of references in this regard. The reference I read was from Karen Armstrong from a book. Angelica Neuwirth, as a major Orientalist scholar, has a separate reference on this. It's a quite a famous one. If you like, I can link some more in the chat. I'm just linking a link, although this is from my Ismaili website. So I don't agree with everything here, but this has a lot of references from non-Muslim scholars in this regard. I've linked it there.
Yeah, we have Lisan for the question next.
Hello, guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, the question is to you, Gabriel. I want to ask you a question. Would you be able to, form your arguments over here without actually mentioning about the hadith only Quran?
So here's the thing, like the problem is that like the arguments that are presented are about hadith. Now if you are like a semi-Quranist or non-denominational or whatever, yes, I can present my arguments using the Quran. Like, so I mean, first of all, I can respond to the claims of scientific miracles and prophecies within the Quran, and also I can provide, like, that is something that I did not got the time to get into, like providing like problems within like scientific errors and like weird like wrong prophecies related to Islam. Like maybe that is which, by the way, wouldn't prove that Islam is wrong, because I think that it is possible for a deceiving God to exist and like send a very incoherent religion to people. So that is totally fine, but it would just destroy the claim that okay, this thing is scientifically intact and awesome, and that's why that's a reason that to think that it is actually from God. Like even if I accepted that premise.
Mm-hmm.
Can
Okay,
I
thank you very
respond to
much.
this
But
point as well?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, first, okay. As far as hadith preservation is concerned, of course, if Gabriel likes, like, I'm available till Sunday, we can have a second debate on Quran and basically scientific error claims. We can do
Sure.
that till Sunday. After that, I'm taking a break. As far as hadith preservation is concerned, we didn't really have the time to go into the arguments in this debate. I made two arguments. I don't think either of them was addressed, whether the one from criterion of dissimilarity with, or the one from salometry. What I will do is, till Sunday, since I'm free, I will challenge anyone here to debate me on the topic of Sunni Hadith preservation, because I am looking for debates on that topic.
okay,
So that's what
I agree. You know what? I agree. I'm going to debate you on one day. Because here's the deal, man. I actually looked. I observed. I did a lot of researches on this topic.
Yeah, sorry.
And,
Lisan, do you have any other question, or we can talk later? You
no, that's
talk
Logic
everything. That's
one
everything.
moment,
But inshallah,
Lisan,
Ammar, later on, yeah.
just message me, DM
Yeah,
me
for sure,
here,
for sure.
and we can set it up. Okay.
All right. Does anyone else have a question? Even if you have another question, someone who's already asked, or anyone else? Okay, we have Farid. We can't hear you. Is that just me, or?
There is someone playing music. I think it's saying it's the music of debate room is playing. I think that is why we can't hear him, or whatever.
Yeah, it's
Farid,
me.
you can put your question in the comment section and I'll address it, if you can't speak here.
Jindullah has another question, apparently.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was hoping if Amar could address my question.
What's your question?
Just a question like why he doesn't, affirm Tawheed and why he's a kafir. I just want to know.
Okay, I'll address this question. Firstly, I'm not a kafir. Secondly, Here's a challenge for any Salafi. Who is the Salafi Mujaddid between Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Abdul Wahhab? According to Sunni Islam, there has to be a Mujaddid present or at least a candidate for Mujaddid every 100 years. So who is the Salafi Mujaddid in these 4 centuries? You have none. Because you have none, your sect cannot be correct. And if it's not correct, your opinion, who is a Muslim and who is a Kafir, is worthless. Fareed can ask his question now.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, now we can. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes.
My question is to Amr. Gabriel made a point about the prophecy you mentioned about the return to meadows and rivers of Arabia, and he said that the word that was used could also mean become in Arabic. So yeah, I didn't see you responding to it. So what's your answer to that?
I actually don't remember hearing it. If I did, I would have responded to this. As far as every interpretation I have heard in this regard, the word is return to being green. So we have to check the lisan in this, the Arabic dictionaries in this regard. But every interpretation I know in this regard has it returning to being green. If that's the case, then my argument stands. His interpretation doesn't work.
But you would still acknowledge that it could mean become in that case if you found it in the dictionary, and then do you think his point would be valid?
Depends on how many dictionaries. Because if, for instance, I'll just give one hypothetical scenario. Most of the dictionaries are having it as return, then my argument would work. If, for instance, the dictionaries, even let me grant your claim for a minute. Let's say it's only become green, not return to being green, right? Then it's a true prophecy. Then while it's not a historical fact, it is a true prophecy. Either way, the argument works. And just to address one more time, as far as gardens and rivers are concerned, while the rivers haven't appeared yet, the gardens certainly have through center pivot irrigation. So that point works. If Gabriel wants to speak on this, like I did with his questioner, he can as well.
Yeah, sure. So again, it is the usual. So it's like a multiple, the prophecy consists of these two things. Like now, the first thing is, yeah, there are gardens in Saudi Arabia, but if you look at it, it's a desert. It's not filled with gardens and gardens, let alone rivers. So that is the first thing. Saying again, I repeat myself, when it comes to it's gonna happen in the future again, it's irrelevant. Either the prophecy is fulfilled or not. Saying it's gonna be fulfilled means nothing. And third of all, of course, there is a reason to we have every reason to think that Muhammad did not know about that. He just was. There were reasons, his reasoning for saying that was not that he actually knew about the future, but just to manipulate the spirit or the psyche of his followers.
We have one more question. If you come on stage.
Let's make it the last question. Yeah, because 10 minutes are up. Let's make it the last question. Hello?
Yeah, 1 minute. 1 second.
Hello?
Yeah, what's your question?
My question is, I find it hard that some atheists find duplicity or things that have basically two meanings and both are right. It's just that I understand the need for precision in life, but in religion it is not the same thing. In language it is not the same thing. Language is not supposed to be precise. I find it hard to understand why some atheists find it really hard to cope with imprecise things like human experience and language. Anybody who wants to comment?
I think this is a question for Gabriel first, so he can respond and then I'll respond.
I think it makes sense. When the claim is related to scientific miracles or prophecy or stuff like that, in order to go away from the default position, which is you don't know what you're talking about because you're a human amongst other humans. in order to go from that default position to another position, another status, which is you actually know what you are talking about. You have to be so precise to the extent that no other explanation is possible. So that's why you need it. Like if you don't need to do it, it's fine. But you are just a superstitious guy who is saying superstitious stuff.
Okay, as far as precision is concerned, right, I think the these that I brought up are clearly precise enough. Firstly. Secondly, the claim from the kuffar side of the kuffar is always on a literal interpretation. Every single claim I made was a prophecy I made has been shown to be fulfilled on a literal interpretation. Literal. If that's the case, the whining in this regard is worthless. And secondly, I don't think Gabriel addressed most of my points in this regard, but one thing is extremely relevant here. If these were just one or two things, right, you can claim it's accident or it's luck or it's chance. But when there are 50 prophecies like this, you cannot claim it's luck or it's chance or it's accidental. At that time, it's just brain dead to claim that. I'll take
Hey,
this
Ahmed, I have a
last
question.
question from
Yeah,
Crash.
this will be the last question. Yes.
Yeah, you do know that the Bible predicts the same thing about the deserts growing into greenery and rivers and meadows again. You know?
Okay, I'll address this point. Yes, I think it's in Isaiah Bible mentioned this point, but if Quran is copied from the Bible, why doesn't it have the dozens of mistakes of the Bible? Why aren't the dozens of prophecies that are in Ahadith not in the Bible? Why is the part about Arabia returning to being green not in the Bible? That's not in the Bible. So, if Quran is if it is claimed that the Bible is a source for the Quran, then two questions need to be answered. Where does the Quran and Ahadith get all the extra accurate information from? Firstly, secondly, why does the Quran and Ahadith not have? Why do they not have the mistakes of the Bible? This was the last question, right? So I think I'm about to go now. Just before I go
No,
now, I
listen,
need to say
listen.
one more thing. One more thing, and this is not related to this debate. Uh, be- the last time I was debating the Kalam cosmological argument, right? A lot of the atheists here, like Solis and all the others, were whining about the principle of sufficient reason. Now, Farid knows this. I challenged all of them to debate me on this topic. I challenged Solis to debate me on this topic, right? Why is it that atheists can talk about the principle of sufficient reason in question and answers, but when it comes the time to debate, they are not willing to debate this topic? I would like to debate this topic firstly, and secondly, since basically I am taking a break after Sunday, maybe I can get a debate on Hadith preservation with Lisan here. I'll message him, and I have to basically go now. Bye.